You're listening to or watching the QC Step Podcast, a podcast to give you the information and the skills that you need to find a job, keep that job, and become a valuable employee. My name is Corey Finneran, and welcome to the 18th episode of the QC Step Podcast. On this episode, I'll share with you some job leads, and then we will continue our discussion on job fairs and career fairs. Today, I'll talk to you about how to start a conversation with an employer at a job fair. So let's take a look at this week's job leads. These job leads are posted every Monday morning at qcstep.com, and there's links to the online applications for some of them. There are some Hy-Vee food stores that are hiring. The Milan store is looking for courtesy clerks, and the Silva store is looking for Italian Express clerks. And that Italian Express clerk position with the Silva's Hy-Vee, that is open until Wednesday. So you have only a couple days to fill out that application. And for either of those openings, you can find the link to the online application at our site. The TJ Maxx in Davenport, that's been on there the last 2 or 3 weeks, and it says that they still have 10 openings. So that's for merchandise associates, and you can apply in person, and the address is 4026 East 53rd Street in Davenport. Whitewater Junction in Rock Island is hiring. That's a good sign because, a lot of these places that hire in the spring and are seasonal are starting to list their openings, so that's really good. Whitewater Junction, they're hiring concession workers, and that includes running a cash register, so you have to be comfortable with that. And you have to be 15 to apply with that position. So for some of you that are under 16 and really wanting to find a job this summer, if you're 15, you can apply there. And we have the link to the online application at our site, and it's under the post job leads February 4th, 2012. We have one job lead for our graduates, and that is at the Hy-Vee on Avenue of the Cities in Moline, and they're looking for a night stalker, and that is a part-time position, and the link to the online application is at our site. If you would like any information on any of these job leads, you can fill out the contact form that's at the bottom of this post, and you will be contacted by Gary Maiden, Carrie Stewart, or myself. The Quad Cities Career Fair for People with Disabilities is coming up on March 4th. We've been talking about that. So between now and then, here in the month of February, we'll continue talking about job fairs and career fairs, and hopefully to help you with this upcoming career fair if you're planning on going to it, or any job fair or career fair if you're not going to this one. So last week we talked about what you should wear to a job fair, and if you missed it, you can go back to episode number 17 and check that out. So on today's episode, I'm going to talk with you about how to start a conversation with an employer at a job fair. But first, I want to go over a couple of things. First off, in preparing for this episode, I realized that some of you probably haven't been to a job fair, or maybe you're not real sure what a job fair even is. So the term career fair and job fair mean the same thing. So you're going to hear me use both, but I'm basically talking about the same thing. A job fair is an event where there are many employers brought to one room or one area to meet with people that are looking for jobs. And they're usually in big rooms, and the employers are set up at tables. And if you're interested in a particular employer, then you can walk up and talk with them, about the openings that they have or information about the positions at their business. So, before you walk into a room for a job fair, there's a few things that you should do. First impressions are very important. I know you've heard that before. And so here's a few things that you should keep in mind. Number 1, be prepared. Bring a folder, and inside have copies of your resume, and bring an application, like a practice application that's all filled out and has all of your information, so that if you speak with an employer and they decide to give you an application to fill out, then you can do it right there. Number 2, hang up your coat. So there's usually a coat rack, and you don't want to walk around carrying around your coat or your jacket. I think if you hang up your coat before you walk in, you will look more organized and put together, and if you're not wearing that and carrying it around. And number 3, wash your hands. Go to the restroom and wash your hands. You're going to be shaking a lot of hands, so you want to make sure that your hands are clean and, at least at the start, germ-free. So you'll want to wash your hands when you leave the career fair too, because you're going to be shaking a lot of hands. There's a lot of germs and sickness out there, and you don't want to end up with some nasty flu because you were just trying to get a job. So walking up to an employer can be an intimidating thing. So when you walk into the career fair, walk around a little bit and kind of get comfortable with the situation. Look at what employers are there and decide which employers you would like to speak with. You're not going to necessarily want to talk to every employer that's there, and that's all right. But don't decide that an employer doesn't have positions that you might be interested in, because they might if you actually talked with them. That's the point of these job fairs, is to speak with employers and find out if you're qualified for or interested in the positions that they have to offer. So, walk up to an employer and introduce yourself. Offer your hand for a handshake. And the handshake is very important. I know you hear your teachers talk about that, and you hear Gary and Carrie and myself talk about that. It shows confidence. And you can say something like, "Hi, my name is Corey Finneran, and I'm a junior in high school, and I would like to know what types of positions you have with your business." If you say that, I guarantee that the conversation will start flowing. Another thing you're going to do is tell them about yourself. You could say, "Well, I haven't had a real job yet, but I've done volunteer work for my neighbors, and I'm part of my school's work program, and I've done some training work through that." I guarantee you that the employer is not going to hear, "I don't have any work experience." They're going to think, "Wow, this person came to the fair prepared, and I want that preparation from my employees." Now, these things might seem like they're a little bit tough to remember, but you have a month to practice them. This particular career fair isn't until March 4th. So practice with your friends that are in your STEP class with you. Practice with your STEP teachers or any other teachers. And you can practice them with the QC STEP staff that comes to your school, Gary Maiden or Carrie Stewart. I'd be happy to help you out by letting you interview with me. At the bottom of this post, you'll see a contact form. I talked about that earlier, that if you had any questions about job openings, you could fill that out. Well, if you would like Gary, Carrie, or myself to meet with you and kind of go over this and practice a little bit with how to start a conversation with an employer at a job fair or a career fair, you can fill out that form and we'd be happy to meet with you. So that's how you can start a conversation at a job fair or a career fair. Next week, I'm going to talk about how to sell yourself at a job fair, and that's probably the most important thing that we're going to be going through here over the next month, is how to sell yourself. What do you say after that first question that you have for them, or the way that you've started the conversation with them? What if they start asking you questions? Well, next week we're going to go over all of that stuff. Well, that does it for episode number 18 of the QC Step podcast. You'll notice that there hasn't been any QCStep.com tips of the week lately. And I think that some of these things that I'm talking with you in preparation for the job fair and career fairs that are coming up in the spring kind of fall into the things that we would be covering in the tips of the week. So those will return probably in March. So you can look for Carrie or Gary, Dawn or Janine to return to the podcast then. But until then, you're stuck with just me. If you would like to get job leads as soon as we get them, you can like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. And don't forget that if you're working a job and you know of any openings with the business that you're working for, you can submit those to me on the right side of QCStep.com, and there's an area to submit job leads. And I would really appreciate it, and I know that the other students would too. So thank you for listening and watching. We will be back next week with another episode of the QC Step Podcast.